Here we are again. Welcome to Chapter 4. This is genetics, heredity, environment, and prenatal development. And this is a big overview from Biology 101, Psych 101, some of the courses that you may have had in other majors. So, talking about genetics and heredity, it starts really basic with the cell and its makeup. And I didn't think that you wanted to hear me just tell you about it, so I found a video with an overview of the cell structure. So, a nice little review for all of you. So, here we go. Okay, we had a good video overview that was probably a little bit more exciting than listening to me, but here are the terms that you need to know on the PowerPoint. So for the quiz, it will be important that you understand the cell, the nucleus, etc. What DNA is, you'll need to know the bases of DNA, what a chromosome is, how many pairs are normal, because you're also going to need to know what's abnormal, because in a minute we're going to talk about different types of issues and syndromes that are hereditary disorders. So just make sure that you know kind of the definition of all of these, and we've already done a beautiful video series on those, which leads me to multiple births. We have a lot of research from multiple births. So we have monozygotic twins, and then we have dizygotic twins, and then the Minnesota study of twins reared apart. That is my doorbell ringing from my child who's outside. I locked the screen door, so I'm gonna. I can't get through one of these, can I? Without a child interrupting me. Okay, I'll be right back. I'm gonna pause you. You will know the difference. So, all right, back to it. Monozygotic twins are is kind of what we think about as identical twins, the ones who began as one egg and were fertilized and then they split. So they're identical and they're very different than dizygotic twins because they're two eggs fertilized by two different sperm cells. So you have the fraternal twins, which are the same genetic makeup as siblings. And we have famous Minnesota study of twins reared apart. Okay, and many of you remember the Minnesota study of twins is still ongoing, looking at the differences in identical and fraternal twins, and then looking at the differences and similarities in identical twins reared apart. And what was found in 1979 was that the identical twins reared apart were very similar in attitude and personality dispositions. But there were differences, and the differences had to be due to their environment. So this is how we really began to understand the combination and impact of genetics plus environment, because they kind of controlled for it with the genetics being so similar. They knew that these characteristics were identical, but that the differences had to be coming from the impact of the environment. It's very interesting. I'm going to pull it up really quickly. I think I am anyway. Right here. I was reading about this and reminding myself exactly about it. And it says one of the similarity of the twins is the so-called gem twins. And so I don't know if you guys remember this, but these twins were adopted at the age of 4 weeks. Both of the adopting couples, unknown to each other, named their son James. Upon reunion of the twins when they were 39 years old, Jim and Jim have learned that they both twins married women named Betty and divorced from women named Linda. One has named his first son James Allen, while the other named his first son James Allen with a different L. Both twins have an adopted brother whose name is Larry. Both named their pet dog Toy. Both had some law enforcement training and had been a part-time deputy sheriff in Ohio. Each did poorly in spelling, well in math, well in carpentry, mechanical drawing, and block lettering. Each vacation in Florida in the same 3-block Long Beach area. Both have tension headaches at 18, gained 10 pounds at the same time, and are 6 feet tall and 180 pounds. Now, I'll tell you what, that is fascinating. So, yeah, that was fun. I thought that was just a little brain break because this stuff can be a little heavy. So, I'm trying to make it somewhat fun for you guys, right? Because you're having to listen to me. All right, influencing traits. And we have dominant genes, as you remember, and recessive genes. And I know that you may have blocked this out from earlier in your studies, but let's go through this just a little bit. So the easiest way to remember this is the dominant genes are usually the ones that you can see, the ones you can observe, and the recessive are not observed. And the dominant are expressed in the genotype, and the recessive genes are not usually expressed in the phenotype. So recessive genes are not observed, which is the phenotype. So let's talk about polygenic inheritance. This is the concept that individual differences in biological characteristics are not traceable to one single gene. This is really important for psychiatric disorders. It's really important to understand it's not traceable to one single gene. In fact, it's just the multiple pairs of genes and how they were activated by the environment. There was a twin study that I learned about, I was looking for it, couldn't find it when I was in school, and so this was a while ago in my undergrad. But I remember being fascinated in abnormal psychology and learning about two twins, and one who was, I think they were identical twins, yes. And one was raised separately. Uh-oh, my daughter's running in. Is somebody hurt? You have to get socks. Okay, all right. I'm sure my students are going to enjoy all of these ad-libbed, exciting brain breaks for them. But one did not have schizophrenia and one did. And it was because of the environment. And I remember that was just earth-shattering for me when I heard it. I thought all the world's answers were right there in my lap in class. So really important for the psychiatric disorders that the varying combinations of genes and experiences can create a wide range of differences in behaviors and symptoms across individuals in the same disorder. It's really, really important to understand that. So genes can activate in some and not in others. Okay. Oh, I went backwards. We don't want to do that. We don't want to go through all that again. And then, of course, you have the disorders, and you need to be familiar with these because you could have clients who come in with these disorders. You could have couples or who they know that they're having a baby with some issues like this, or you have something of that nature. I mean, then we're starting here in lifespan development. You also need to know this stuff for your test. So there are different types of hereditary disorders. So I would just go through each one and know each one of these if I were you. Just to quickly run down, sex chromosomal disorders, they are caused by missing or extra chromosomes on the 23rd chromosomal pair. You saw that in the video, which is the sex determining chromosome. You remember the fun video we saw in the beginning? Autosomal disorders, and they involve anomalies of any of the other 22 pairs also saw in the video. Sometimes the video is easier to conceptualize, I think, than me just sitting here telling you about it. Then we have all the other ones on page 85 in your text. We start, of course, with Down syndrome. It's the 21st chromosome. It results, and we are all very familiar with that, so we don't need to go on that. But then we have Turner syndrome, and a chromosome is missing from a chromosomal pair. It's called a monosomy. An example of this is the Turner syndrome, in which a female loses an X from the 23rd chromosomal pair. During meiosis, the X is lost. The defective sperm fertilizes the intact egg, and the chromosomal anomaly on the sex chromosome results. only at 1 in 200, and they have some characteristics that are noteworthy. Shortened height, webbed neck, heart disease, and infertility. Then we have Klinefelter's, Fragile X, Huntington's disease. So go through and just know those, memorize them. PKU, sickle cell disease, kind of understand what they are in case I ask you about one of those. Genetics and temperament. So temperament is something that is your temper, your behavior. So it usually involves unique characteristics that are stable over time and can typically begin to see this in when there are infants, either really calm or high strung or extroverted or introverted, how highly they react, their arousal for positive and negative interactions, and also what is their ability to self-regulate or calm themselves down. Um, Temperament seems to stay relatively stable throughout time. And let's see, what else do we need to know about that? Hmm, I don't need y'all to know about Pavlov, do I? No, let's just keep going. All right. Okay. Let me see what I can do to make this more exciting. We talked about this already. The genotype, phenotype, canalization. No, we talked about that. I'm going to keep going. Genetic counseling. This is something that's really important and it's become more prevalent in recent years. Um, Based off the Human Genome Project. So we now know a lot. We can find out about these genetic disorders through amniocentesis and other testing to see if our babies are going to have certain types of disorders, and can even somewhat determine what the risk is when you're planning a family. Um, so this counseling is highly recommended for families that plan to conceive but have a family history of abnormalities or disorders. So when I was pregnant, I had one child at 30 when I was 32 and one at 36. When I was 36, when I was pregnant with Gray, was considered high risk. So I had that offered me the amniocentesis and other types of issues to see if, and I did declined because my view was no matter what I was going to have the baby. Um, so it was just really important, and we've come a long way with that in recent years. Okay, I highly suggest that you make sure you read this section on contraception. I cannot tell you how much this area of expertise. I tell you, I saw 9 clients today, and now I'm doing this lecture. I didn't have a break. So I'm thinking right now going, am I even thinking clearly to do this? I had actually read the chapter another day, and then I got, uh-oh, my children are screaming. I'm also home. My husband's not here, but here we go. At least it makes it somewhat entertaining for you. But you guys better be prepared for this, because you're going to have teenagers who come in pregnant. You're going to have teenagers who come in asking you about contraception. You're going to have adults coming in and asking you about contraception, which pills, condoms. They're going to ask you about implants, IUDs. You're going to find out that perhaps when you do your intake, my cat's meowing. So I hope when you guys listen to this video that you die laughing at me, because this is the 17th disruption. The cat. All right. Maybe he'll quit meowing. All right. So I find a lot of times that women who come in when we do their intake, and I find out, they say, "Oh, I've been depressed for about a year, and I've been gaining weight, and I feel horrible." I'll say, "Well, what happened about a year ago?" And they won't even think to tell me that they got an IUD. And so I will ask about contraception. I will ask about when's your last physical, when's your last visit with your OB, to find out if perhaps it is the birth control, it is the IUD, because what you'll find a lot of times is the hormones are really affecting your clients. And also, specifically with young women, college age students, and young adults, it seems like a great idea to get an IUD or some other type of contraception that's going to, like the shot, the depot shot. They only to do that 4 times a year, and the IUD stays in. You don't have to think about a pill, but they have a lot of side effects. And so sometimes that's really what's going on with your client. And so it's really, really important. Also, you're going to have people who are coming in who've had babies and don't want to have any more babies. You're going to have people coming in um, that are in a relationship and they're worried about getting pregnant or having sexual diseases, or people who come in with sexual diseases. And these are all things that we really need to make sure you need to know what all of this stuff is. So, like, guys, if you don't know what an IUD is, or you don't know what some of this stuff is, and some of the females even, you need to make sure that you know what this is. You're going to have clients come in who are infertile, who are trying and trying to get in vitro, artificial insemination, right? All of these things are assisted reproductive technology, surrogacy, that's when you pay someone else to carry the baby or something like that, or have someone. There's adoption, family planning. I've had everything that I've just said to you on this slide. I've had in my office multiple times. Let me take that back. I'm not exactly sure that I've had a surrogate. I've never seen a surrogate, but I've had somebody who's tried to get a surrogate, if that makes any sense. So believe me, you will have all of these come across in your office at one point or another. So you need to know the difference between artificial insemination and in vitro fertilization. Artificial insemination is when the sperm is injected into the uterus, and very often there are people who have used an anonymous donor for artificial insemination. This can be same-sex couples or people who just want to have children, who are not in a relationship. And so um, that's something to be aware of, because sometimes, quite frankly, and I'm not opposed to this at all, but sometimes lately we've gotten the children in therapy at some point. There's a lot of questions, and some of the issues that come um, from adoption and being in foster care and things such as that, of the kind of that not knowing if they don't know who um, the donor is. So it's just it's an interesting concept, and just something to make you aware of. But it's also on the other end for people who are going through that process, and that you know what it is, versus in vitro, which is when they take the egg and the sperm in the petri dish and then implant them together, IVF, and it's very stressful for people that are going through that and through families. Very difficult. A lot of times, if it's not viable, it's painful and stressful and very, very traumatic. I've actually done EMDR. I do EMDR on fertility sometimes, and do EMDR on the IVF, and a lot of these. I've done almost all of these issues, miscarriages, abortion. Okay, and that's in here too. Lots of people, young people, teens, are going to come and maybe come to therapy and say, I'm pregnant. And so what their considerations are is very high rate of abortion. And so being prepared to know what their options are and being ready to lay them all out on the table so that you can assist your client in helping them to make the choice. Remember, we don't make the choice, and we don't do anything, and we don't give advice, but we have to know what these options are, and we have to be prepared with what are we going to do when that walks through the door? How are we going to handle that? Whew. All right. Whew, that was country. All right. Detecting pregnancy, miscarriage, and abortion. Oh, look, I was ahead of myself. Look at this. So, again, we're here in this stage of lifespan development. Pregnancy tests are designed to determine if urine or blood contains HCG, which is a hormone that's produced after the egg attaches to the wall of the uterus. That's what basically a pregnancy test tests for. And there are several, that's how you detect pregnancy. And then there are several terms about miscarriage, which is the spontaneous death of a fetus, um, spontaneous recurrent abortions, SRAs, which are repeated miscarriages, often with an unknown cause, and then, of course, abortion of an unwanted pregnancy or abnormal fetus. So if you had basically the amniocentesis, which is the needle aspiration before and found that something was wrong with the fetus, you could choose to terminate the pregnancy. May resolve a mother's inability to care for a child, the risk of maternal um, death, fetal abnormalities, or ill timing of conception. So then we go through the trimesters of pregnancy. You guys didn't know y'all were in nursing school, did you? And childbirth, and finally reflection. So hang on, let's go back. Where were we? First trimester. Heavens to Betsy, I remember these. Okay. This is like the first part of the pregnancy, right? Conception. And here is the development of the fetus. So making sure that you just know this kind of what happens in each trimester. And this helps you too, because you'll have pregnant clients at some point, and you'll kind of need to know what's going on and what the risks are, and just being supportive. And when they're talking about certain things, you're not looking at them like they're off their rocker. Um, the start of the 9 weeks marks the beginning of the fetal period. So the second trimester is, so the second and third trimester on this one. So rapid growth, fetus grows to 7 inches long, 4 ounces, bones continue, that downy hair, that lanugo. So if you have a preterm baby that might be born at the end of the second trimester, a lot of times they can have that downy hair and that waxy substance can still be on the baby, that vernix. And then I don't know how to say that other word, but I know what they're talking about. And the third, it's where the baby really grows and reflexes start, central nervous system matures, organs mature, and birth. So factors that affect the prenatal environment, and again, very important, especially if you're working in substance abuse, because lots of substances that can cause abnormalities in newborns. So it's really important to be educated about this and understand it. So these teratogens are the things that you guys already know about, and the terat I can't say this. Teratology is the study of structural malformations in newborns. So teratogens are those things that we already know are really toxic, right? For most of us already, but not everything, because SSRIs are not, but for infants they can be. So alcohol, cigarettes, marijuana, all drugs, alcohol, etc. Having an immune deficiency disorder like AIDS, not having effective nutrition, malnutrition, not getting your radiation, your nutrients, mercury. That's just, I couldn't eat tuna or like swordfish and stuff like that. You can't eat stuff like that when you're pregnant. RH factor. And the RH factor is something that is really prevalent with Caucasians. The 1960s, they discovered this. So mothers with a partial RH antigen are encouraged to receive preventative treatment to try to not pass it on to their fetus or newborn. It's called the rhesus blood system. It causes I'm saying this wrong, hemolytic disease in a newborn. Um, you your emotional state can be very have an impact on fetal development. Um, Irreversible damage to neural pathways in the fetus. Um, any kind of diseases that the mother has. So noteworthy here that some of your clients may have to stop taking their SSRIs when they're pregnant. It can be really devastating, really difficult for them. You may have clients who are drinking or smoking or not able to stop using a lot of the substances that they've been used to using, and may have issues with their age, like me, being an old mom. But anyway, all very, very important things for you to be aware of. So there's a really important to make sure there's good prenatal care and birthing methods to make sure mom and baby are safe. Um, Better premarital care and vitamins and making sure you're having those checkups, etc., will make sure that you have a better outcome with the birth of the baby. Also, if you deal with women and women's issues a lot, and I see a lot, I just have a kind of a following for this because of the holistic health, but you will see a lot of women talking about how they want their birthing experience to go, and they may really want to have natural birth, and it may not go that way. They may have to be induced. They may be really fearful. So They may have to have the cesarean delivery. So just kind of know the differences in those. A lot of you don't have kids yet, so you may not know too much about all of that. So just make sure you know that stuff, okay? And then you can have different problematic pregnancies. Let's see. What do I want you to do here? Have, gosh, some of this seems like maybe we don't need to know it, but we will. How about this? Um, you monitor the pregnancy. You may have to have close monitor of the heart rate, and definitely when you're in labor, that's what they do. They check the heart rate every time you go in. Um, you can receive medications like an epidural. Thank you. So grateful for that. That will relieve some of the pain of childbirth. I'm a big fan of the epidural. And then oxygen deprivation. So let's talk about the different. I, my children asked me if they could bring their friends from next door. It is, let's see, it's late. My children asked if they could bring some friends in from next door, and I was like, yes, but you'll have to be really, really quiet. We haven't let anyone really in our house. And I don't know if you can hear them up there, but yeah. So I'm hoping we'll get done with this soon. How about this? Just know those different terms. I mean, they're pretty self-explanatory. Infant mortality, look at the infant mortality rates, stillbirth, etc. That's very traumatic for the families and horrible. And I've had that too, and it's definitely a trauma. You may have clients who have preterm babies and they have to go and stay in the hospital and they have to be there around the clock, etc. So let's see. In 2006, the Centers CDC released a U.S.-based national statistic report on infant mortality. Infant mortality was 6.68 deaths for every 1,000 births. There were risk factors. Um, Infants born to black mothers had higher incidence of death compared with other races, and male infants always have higher deaths than female infants. Um, so you can kind of look at those different factors. I think that's interesting. And stillbirth is after 28 weeks with no vital signs. Um, all right, let's keep going. We can get through this without having my children run down here again. The children that we're talking about having children and my children are upstairs. So childbirth. So the mother is ready to give birth. This first stage of labor is the latent phase. That's when the cervix begin to efface or thin. And the active phase is when the mother's uterus is contracting and you're starting to go like really feeling it, and the cervix is dilating, so you're starting to be able to have the baby getting closer. The delivery phase of the childbirth is when you're fully dilated at a 10, and the expulsive phase is when the contractions really begin to force the child's head through the birth canal. And the final stage, when you have the baby, and the final stage is the expulsion of the placenta. Adaptation to the environment in neonatal procedures. Once the baby's born, the umbilical cord is clamped, the baby is cleaned up, air passage is sucked out and cleaned. They give that APGAR test to see how they did through the birth process and how well they're adapting to the environment. Do they have the normal reflexes? Are they rooting? Are they looking for the breast to feed? And then they have a certain Brazelton neonatal behavioral assessment scale. So you need to know APGAR and you need to know the Brazelton neonatal behavioral assessment scale. Observes the behavioral, emotional, social reactions and dispositions of the newborn, because those will probably be on the NCE. So you want to know those for lifespan development. Postpartum depression. Again, you can see through this whole PowerPoint how important all of this is for you to understand and be aware of. Very prevalent. I would say higher than 19% of women experience postpartum in the first year after childbirth. Um, Feeling insignificant, depressed, lack of interest in behavior. It can be there's a really big drop in hormones that really cause the baby blues, and then once women don't get through baby blues, then you know it's postpartum depression. Can really lead to maladaptive attachment. So as clinicians, if we're thinking that that is what's going on, we want to make sure we jump right in and educate and talk about and reduce the shame, because there's so much shame that comes along with that, and there shouldn't be, because it's so prevalent. That's a large number of people that experience it. Young parents, these are risk factors for PPD. Young parents, first-time fathers, unrealistic. So not just for women, that men can also have depression after having children, okay? And make sure you don't forget about daddies. So, unrealistic expectations, if you already had anxiety, depression, or low self-esteem, couples can be experiencing these depressive symptoms together. And one moderating factor is that job satisfaction can really prevent development of depressive symptoms. Okay, we did it. Okay, and as for today, this is your reflection for 4. Many of the clients seen by counselors have disorders with a genetic or partially genetic basis. What would be the implications for these clients in society if non-discrimination laws did not exist, or if employer, educational institutions, or other organizations use loopholes? Teenage and adult clients often seek counseling to deal with pregnancy, childbirth, and childbearing issues. How can counselors prepare themselves for the breadth and depth of issues related to these topics? Which one do you think I want you to answer? Yes, you are correct. Number 2 is what I want you to answer in the forum. Teenage and adult clients often seek counseling to deal with pregnancy, childbirth, and childbearing issues. How can counselors prepare themselves for the breadth and depth of issues related to these topics? I look forward to hearing from you in the forum. Thank you and good night. I made it through and I hope you make it through too.